How many Americans and the people in the world do you think would have supported a war based on the agenda of achieving full spectrum dominance? Nobody. So you have to lie about it. Osama bin Laden was never charged with the crime of 9/11 because he did not do it. Israeli Mossad and traitors in the U.S. government and military, along with patsies from Saudi Arabia, are directly responsible. We know about the explosives in the vans for Israeli Mossad agents on the day. We know that the only people arrested on the day of 9/11 were Israelis. We know that Larry Silverstein and Frank Lowy bought the two worthless buildings that were full of asbestos, took control of the security of the buildings. We know that Israeli Mossad was in those buildings with blasting caps, and yet we managed to blame Afghanistan and the Taliban and ultimately Osama bin Laden for a crime that he clearly did not commit so that we would carry out this war of aggression to achieve the goal of full spectrum dominance. So,
aloha and welcome back. I just did the debate program on Press TV today, and I wanted to add a couple of pieces of information that I wasn't able to get in during the broadcast. The first thing is that Press TV or the studio got it wrong. They did not focus on me properly in studio, so it's a bit blurry. So don't try and correct it. There's really nothing you can do. That's the first time that's ever happened. Now, the points that I want to make in addition to the ones that I made, a couple of things. I didn't get to mention the drugs, the poppy crops, how they had been basically eliminated before we, the good guys, came to invade. I didn't get to mention the fact that, of course, the CIA is running the heroin out of there, and there's billions and billions and billions being used for black ops that are derived from that illegal, illicit drug trade, which, of course, U.S. and other Western troops are there to protect. Interesting, but true. I didn't get to mention that. I didn't get to talk about how much we love women in Afghanistan because you might recall after we invaded 16 years ago, there was so many wonderful stories about the lovely little girls who were now able to go to school and the women who could work now and all of the beautiful liberating realities that we, the West, were going to come and shower the Afghani people with. And it was just so wonderful and rosy. Where are we now? Well, I'm sorry, if you love women and the causes of women, boy, you got something to hate in the United States. Aside from the fact that we did nothing but play PR, wag the dog operations in terms of just how wonderful we are and how much we care about women. Not only do we do that, but we arm Saudi Arabia to the tune of $350 billion where, they just gave women the right to drive a car. They're not voting, however. There won't be any democratic elections in Saudi Arabia, and even if there was, there won't be any women voting in it. And women who want to go out alone, no, you can't do that. And oh, by the way, if you want to get a divorce, sorry, that's not possible. Oh, your husband is beating you and raping you? Oh, that's very unfortunate. Very sorry for you. But you're going to have to stay married. So we love women so much, and that's really, really clear, of course, by how we arm Saudi Arabia to the teeth. And how much we have devoted ourselves to the cause of women in Afghanistan, because today it's so much better than it's actually every bit as bad, if not even worse. And so we don't give a shit about women. I didn't get to mention that either. Some things that I did get to mention, which I'd really like for those, who like what I do and want to kind of work together, as it were, please take this interview and the bits where this man is denying some absolute truths, which any of us who know about 9/11 truth, well, we know this. The truths that he denied are, one, he says that Osama bin Laden admitted to this. This is the ridiculous doctored, not Osama bin Laden wearing jewelry idiot who was part of a video that claims to be Osama bin Laden. This is beyond ridiculous, and it's not going to work in any critical thinking society. Osama bin Laden himself, in both written word and in video, denied very clearly being involved. Osama bin Laden is just like others who we can look to. Dictators and tyrants are great as long as they serve a useful purpose for us. So clearly Osama bin Laden served a useful purpose to perpetuate the whole war on terror thing before it was official, supposedly bombing the USS Cole and all this kind of stuff. Osama bin Laden can rightly be compared to Saddam Hussein, who was a fantastic tool and whipping boy for the empire. And he was told to go sick 'em on Iran, and that's what he did, and 1 million Iranians died, and probably a similar number of Iraqis, because Saddam was our boy. And then we screwed him over. We screwed him over completely, and that's the war I went to, the 1991 Gulf War, in which we killed tens of thousands of Iraqis who really wanted no part of it. Saddam Hussein got suckered into invading Iraq and then realized that he was nothing more than a sand nigger. Let's put it in an accurate term in terms of the way the world sees these individuals, these corrupt tyrants in the Middle East. You're nothing more than sand niggers in the eyes of those who are ruling over you. And Saddam Hussein realized that full force because he got screwed over. So I'm not going to agree with anybody who says he's a great guy. He got screwed over by the empire. And there were some things that were, positive about him. Look at Iraq now. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. Never mind the probably around 2 million dead, millions of refugees. How's that affecting Europe and the West? And was that an accident? No, purposely, very purposely done. And the millions of orphans, by the way, who you don't hear a whole lot about. You hear about the refugees all the time. You don't hear much about the orphans. I've spent time with orphans in Baghdad. Who lost both parents or one parent and had nothing. Absolutely. You can imagine how hard it is to survive with no money and no social services in America. Imagine being a kid on your own in Baghdad in a war zone with no parents, no social services, nothing. And I'll tell you what, that's what I've seen. All these kids, these little kids have razor blade cuts all over their face. They all carry razor blades, and this is the way they establish that they're not an easy mark. They cut each other up with razor blades. How we can even equate a value to the suffering it's not even possible. Saddam Hussein, Noriega, another one, was working quite well for the U.S., was serving their purposes, running drugs, blah, 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 blah. And, well, then he got too big for his britches and got screwed over. And now Noriega's sitting in a prison cell in Florida for the rest of his life. So Osama bin Laden realized this and was quick to make very clear statements about that, the fact that he did not carry out 9/11, as if he could have carried that out anyway. Come on, man, are you serious? And he didn't carry out the event. And even if he did, where's the evidence? Where is the evidence other than a bogus confession? I just watched a program on Netflix not long ago about one person after another who was clearly, provably, falsely convicted of major crimes, usually rape and murder, stuff like this. And they were by confessions. It was a good program. Netflix is full of Zionist, Jewish supremacist crap, but there's nuggets of truth and good in there. So the bottom line is Osama bin Laden did not carry this out. This other guest completely, ridiculously denies that. He also denies, this is what I'm asking you to do. Make a video and show this guy. Call him out. So this guy, what an idiot. You say that the FBI didn't acknowledge that there was no legitimate evidence linking Osama bin Laden to 9/11. That's why he was never charged, ever. Why wouldn't he be charged? Why wouldn't you charge the guy that carried out the biggest crime in American history? Why wouldn't you do that? What, are you lazy? And why wasn't there a legitimate investigation? I didn't mention that either. All the evidence was carted away. Any major crime always requires the same protocols. Immediately upon investigators arriving on the scene, you cut off the scene. You cut off all access only to those that you directly authorize, and you don't touch any of the evidence. In fact, you preserve the evidence, and then you will investigate with forensic science and other methods to be able to identify any clues as to who might be responsible. Osama bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, the guy in the cave in Afghanistan on dialysis without a mobile phone, did not mastermind this. We never should have believed that crap, but it shows how brain dead we were, that we never pondered that our own government or other intelligence services who were supposed to be allies would do this false flag type of operation. So anyway, he denies that. He also denies the fact that the only people arrested on 9/11 were Israelis. He also denied the fact that Israelis were caught with explosives in their vans. He certainly didn't address the fact that Larry Silverstein and Frank Lowy bought two worthless buildings full of asbestos in which the cost of removing the asbestos was far greater than the value of the buildings, and they did that just a few weeks before 9/11 happened. Oh, and by the way, in that time, doubled the insurance policy. And in fact, Silverstein and Lowy, two Jewish billionaires. Imagine if they were Muslim billionaires. Imagine that. Two Jewish billionaires who most people don't even know who they are. Certainly most don't know Frank Lowy. And, well, they managed to buy the building, take control, take control of the buildings security-wise, and basically give the red carpet to Israeli Mossad, who we also have videotaped with blasting caps in the Twin Towers as well. This mouthpiece in Washington denies all of that. These are easy things to prove, but to show, I think it would be worthwhile to show how these mouthpieces can get up and say this stuff, because there is enough cognitive dissonance out there whereby enough people still buy it to where they can just about get away with it. But we're not too far away from the point where it becomes such a liability to maintain the official version of 9/11 that everyone who will back that kind of nonsense fairy tale will be seen as what they are, prostitutes of a sort who have sold their soul to the devil in service to the empire. So all of these things that I said were true. I'm happy I said it. I was very happy to be accused of being an anti-Semite. I continuously require that in order to feel that I am speaking the truth, because if you are speaking the truth in this world and you're not being accused of being an anti-Semite, well, then you're either censoring yourself, you're too afraid to speak the truth on these matters, and ultimately, or you're too stupid to realize. I mean, for 9/11, we're way beyond a new investigation, which I don't really care about that anyway. We already know everything we need to know. If we could set up a legitimate investigating body or tribunal that would have some teeth and really be worthwhile, then I, of course, fully support it. The evidence is there. We know Israeli Mossad's fingerprints are all over it, along with traitors in the U.S. government, including dual nationals, Michael Chertoff being one of the biggest ones, who basically helped destroy the crime scene and send off suspects who had been arrested on 9/11, Israeli Mossad agents who failed lie detector tests, no less. Michael Chertoff, who ushered in and authored the Patriot Act, which was ready to go before 9/11. There's plenty of people that can be arrested right now, especially for the crime of destroying evidence. This is a major crime on the day of the biggest crime in the history of the United States. So there is a lot of reason to maintain our optimism, and let's, hey man, go for the throat. When these people can get caught out lying, bald-faced lying, what, does this guy not know that the FBI said there was no credible evidence linking Osama bin Laden, and therefore that's why he was in charge? Let us get to the points here that are important. America clearly is the threat. With its partners, Israel and Britain, this is the true axis of evil. And for those of you, my American brothers and sisters who were in the military, especially the Marine Corps, come on, man. Come on. Am I some pussy hippie? Just peace, socialist? No, I'm not. And I would have stood right by your side and fought and killed to defend America. And I was prepared to do that. And by the grace of God, thankfully, I did not. I was not required to kill anybody. And I mean that. Thank God. If I had to do it, I would have done it. And if you've done that, listen, you did what you felt you had to do. But I'm sure, I don't have any doubts whatsoever, many of you are suffering badly. Some of you are going to commit suicide. You're probably already alcoholics and on drugs, some of which you'll be given by the VA. They don't give a shit about you. As Kissinger so accurately said, the military are nothing but dumb animals to be used. That is the way they see you. That is the way. So I am not some pussy hippie, peace, love, and listen, I'm all for love and I'm all for peace. But I don't give a shit about peace without justice. And if you're a true red-blooded American patriot, stop being used as a chump. You work for Jewish supremacists. Make no mistake. Your government, which controls the military, is run, infiltrated, infested with dual national traitors whose only loyalty isn't even really to Israel as much as it's to Satan and evil as a whole. That's who's running your government and therefore giving you your orders. And if you're ready and willing to go die for that, okay, a lot of people aren't going to like that. I, for one, feel sorry for you. For the ones out there who know, at least deep down, you can acknowledge like there's truth to what I'm saying here and you do care, and you took that oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution seriously, and it bothers you to see that those in charge of you are traitors. And that's who you take your orders from. I went through that experience. Not that exact scenario, but I went through the experience of being willing to give up my life and kill for America, and then realizing that I was serving nothing but a tyrannical force, being used as heavies to go and enforce corporate Zionist Jewish supremacist policy around the world. Smedley Butler's War is a Racket. Read that book. Read it. There's a Marine. You can hate me and think I'm this, that, or the other, but Smedley Butler is the ultimate Marine, and he basically broke it down in very simple terms. So refuse the orders. When they send you off to Syria or to Iran, God forbid, refuse the orders. You have no idea how powerful that move will be. You really don't. And while you will feel like you're going to be abandoned by friends and family and everything, I'm telling you, the majority of the world is going to love and respect you big time when you refuse the orders as they send you off to World War III. So that's my hope and why I do what I do. There's one other thing about this video. Because there's a delay, when you're speaking on satellite, there's a delay. And I kind of got in a back and forth for a minute or two there, much longer than I normally would. Normally, I would, I won't interrupt, but very rarely. If you watch all my interviews, very rarely will I interrupt. And if I do, I'll do it quickly and I'll get out. I generally do not interrupt the other guests. I get interrupted a lot, and I still generally do not interrupt. But in this particular interview, there was sort of a delay back and forth, so I kept hearing something after it was said, and he kept hearing it after I said it, and then there was the commentator as well. So the bottom line is that lasted a little bit longer. Time was lost, and we were both just talking over each other. Apologies for that. I really didn't mean to do it that way, but hey, it happens. The rest of what I said, I think, hopefully will make up for that. But just giving you an insight. I'm going to be making more videos. I'm going to be talking about World Citizen. For those of you that are waiting for World Citizen, have faith, all right? Have faith. I'm just wanting more of those who've accused me of fraud, theft, and all this kind of stuff. Please, come on out. Keep coming. Please. Please, please, please. Come on out publicly. Richie Allen, Max Egan, and your little host of friends. Please, keep repeating it. Honestly, I really want you to. And for those that you want to know the truth and are looking forward to hearing from me, whether you love me or hate me, whatever, you will. You're going to get that. So the money and the accounting, I'm good. I'm good. I mean, if you wonder why I'm confident about this stuff, I have the accounting and the money. And I know what those who've accused me, I know what they have. Nada. So I said I would use myself years ago to suck people out, the infiltrators, the idiots and infiltrators, and that's what I'm doing. But I promise you it won't be too much longer. I'll explain where World Citizen is at, and hey, I'm as confident as ever, believe you me. And the delays actually worked out very, very well because many things technologically have happened that make our mission, the details of the mission, much better. And I'm sure many are going to be very excited to hear what those things are. And I'm going to do that soon enough. So thank you for those who have been patient. Thank you to everyone who's been giving on Patreon. Honestly, it's grown a lot just with a few videos. And I'm getting close to the goal that I set. So I really appreciate that. And let me say from the bottom of my heart, the most heartfelt thanks again to everyone who's not only giving money, but those that are sharing and liking and spreading the information. Thank you all very, very much indeed. And I hope you enjoy the debate.
It has been 16 years that the U.S. has been occupying Afghanistan, and despite spending billions of dollars in taxpayer money, it has announced that it will spend another $54 billion this year in a war that it just can't win. This is while a number of U.S. lawmakers are questioning whether there is a right strategy in place under Trump. Meanwhile, the Taliban and Daesh terrorists are creating havoc in the country with their deadly offensives.
Porous borders, the lack of rule of law, and the defeats in Iraq and Syria have now prompted many European and Western members of Daesh to go to Afghanistan in order to continue their brutalities and violence.
The best thing that can be done, which I hope is being done right now, is if there can be influence from the American government on the Afghan government to reach political agreements internally with all the different groups, which is really the only alternative, ultimately, to stalemate that will never end. We're not going to lose. We're not going to win. No one's going to win. No one's going to lose. They're going to keep killing each other for another 20 years unless there is an agreement. But in the meantime, I support programs to kill the terrorists. I think they're the right thing to do, but I also think we have to get a political solution, because there is no military solution in Afghanistan in the long run. It just won't be done. We'll be doing it forever. We've been there long enough. We need to find a way out that brings some level of stability to the country through a diplomatic process and a political solution.
I mean, for a war that's gone on for 16 years, going on 17, Ken O'Keefe, I heard Brent Podolsky talk about a rational policy or an agreement with the government, and he's hoping that things are being done in terms of getting there. All this taxpayer money, after all this time, doesn't sound like there is a solution in sight that is going to work.
Well, we need to really return to some level of sanity and intelligence here. The truth of the matter is that everything about the invasion of Afghanistan, as well as the invasions of Iraq and other countries in the region, have nothing to do with the publicly stated purposes. So if you're confused and think that the reason why we invaded Iraq was to protect ourselves from the madman armed with weapons of mass destruction, well, subsequently you've come to realize that was a lie. The actual basis of invading Afghanistan, lest we forget, is that supposedly Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda are responsible for the events of 9/11. Now we know, having the benefit of the FBI itself saying that the reason why Osama bin Laden was never charged was because there was no credible evidence linking him to the event. We also know that the Project for a New American Century, which was a think tank full of the dual national U.S. traitors with Israeli citizenship, we're talking about the need to carry out a war to win a goal of full spectrum dominance. For those who don't know what that is, that's total control over air, land, sea, and space and cyberspace. This was the goal of these nutcases who had the ear of George Bush, their little puppet. And ultimately, they said that they would want to carry out this war to achieve this goal of full spectrum dominance. But effectively, the American people were pretty much too stupid to realize the benefits of America carrying out this war of the world. And ultimately, they needed a, quote, new Pearl Harbor event in order to justify these plans. Because for the powers that be and their puppets to say, we want to carry out wars of aggression around the world in order to secure strategic and military sites for the goal of achieving full spectrum dominance, total control over the planet. How many people do you think in the world, much less America, would support such a plan, knowing that American sons and daughters would be used once again as cannon fodder for American imperialism and Israeli wars? How many Americans and the people in the world do you think would have supported a war based on the agenda of achieving full spectrum dominance? Nobody. So you have to lie about it. Osama bin Laden was never charged with the crime of 9/11 because he did not do it. Israeli Mossad and traitors in the U.S. government and military, along with patsies from Saudi Arabia, are directly responsible. We know about the explosives in the vans for Israeli Mossad agents on the day. We know that the only people arrested on the day of 9/11 were Israelis. We know that Larry Silverstein and Frank Lowy bought the two worthless buildings that were full of asbestos, took control of the security of the buildings. We know that Israeli Mossad was in those buildings with blasting caps, and yet we managed to blame Afghanistan and the Taliban and ultimately Osama bin Laden for a crime that he clearly did not commit, so that we would carry out this war of aggression to achieve the goal of full spectrum dominance. So can we please stop pretending as if anything the United States says makes any sense whatsoever, or that it is in any way honest about anything? I just don't understand why anyone would believe anything the United States says.
Do you believe
this gentleman who talks as a mouthpiece for the State Department is selling American sons and daughters down the river again. And this gentleman in Washington is going to send more American sons and daughters to be slaughtered for Israel. and wars of aggression that serve no interest. Meanwhile, people back home in the United States don't even know how they're going to keep a roof over their head.
Okay.
And let's talk about making America great again. You know,
Well,
let's
let's
go on and on. Nothing America says is true.
Let's bring in Brent Badowski for a reaction. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to minimize the imposition on our audience and not spend a lot of time answering the lies, nonsense, and anti-Semitism I just heard. This has nothing to do, what we're talking about today, with Israel. The new American century basically lost its influence in the second term of Bush when he began to realize that they were dead wrong. The fundamental mistake in Afghanistan in 2001 and 2002, which I argued vehemently against the war at that point, what I was saying then is we should have finished the job in Afghanistan and gotten out. We should have, which we could have done if we didn't go to war in Iraq. I said from the very beginning, and I knew about the Iraq war before most people did. I argued against it before most people knew about it, and I was against it all the way through. That what happened was the Iraq war, which was a dramatic mistake, ended up prolonging the Afghanistan war by taking our troops out of Afghanistan and putting them into Iraq, wrongly, in my opinion. And that just created a double problem. So I think that was when the fundamental mistake was made. We should have won the Afghan war in 2002, 2003, and phased ourselves out at that point. And what happened is we got involved in the quagmire in Iraq, which was wrong, which I was against from the beginning. And then we didn't solve the Afghanistan problem. And then we just got stuck in this quagmire in both countries. I'll go back to what I said earlier. What has to be done today is there has to be a political solution on one level that will bring the Afghan people together, including the government and the Taliban and the different opposition and government parties, in ways that would facilitate a de-escalation of American involvement tied to
I have to jump in and ask you, Brent Badowski, you don't think that's been tried before? I mean, honestly, what you're saying, you don't think it's been tried before?
Well, I think, no, I don't think it has been. I think the problem with the United States policy for too long on that is we basically didn't know exactly what we were trying to do. And I've been critical of Bush to some degree. I've been critical of Obama. Right now, I'm critical of Trump. But what I do know is what we should do now and do it right. There is no alternative to the kind of political solution that I am suggesting. The only alternative to that is a war that never ends, people that never stop dying. That is not good for the people of Afghanistan, of the United States, or the region. So there's, you know, it's not easy to do. I don't say it's easy to do.
Well,
but I think
notion,
that is the only way out.
Brent Badowski, thanks for bringing that to light. Ken O'Keefe, the war that never ends. There are so many articles out there that state that the U.S. wants a perpetual state of war, and Afghanistan fits into that picture. Is that a wrong conclusion to make?
No, and this is the problem with believing anything that's said in the Western media or coming out of the mouths of State Department and White House officials. Again, it's massively amazing to me that anyone would buy anything that's said. This gentleman in Washington, D.C. will not respond with anything other than the standard smears, which I thank you for calling me an anti-Semite, because if I'm not being called an anti-Semite in this world, I must not be speaking the truth. You know damn well that Osama bin Laden was never charged with a crime. Will you admit that? He was never charged with the crime of committing 9/11. Do you understand that? Will you acknowledge that we invaded the country based on a lie? Will you acknowledge that I just have one question for you.
I will acknowledge it. Am I allowed to answer your question, or are you just going to keep asking
let him answer, Ken O'Keefe. Go ahead, Brent Badowski, go ahead.
Any statement that Osama... Please, let me finish, okay? I think you're lying right now. Any statement that Osama bin Laden was not involved in 9/11...
I'm not asking you to give me 2-3 minutes of total rubbish.
No, I said I'll answer in one sentence.
You know what? The world, the audience knows. Never mind. You can speak when it's your turn. It is my turn now.
Okay, Brent Badowski, hold on. Hold on,
Brent Badowski. When I am done, you can speak,
and
I will listen to you again. The world knows full well that Osama bin Laden was not charged, that the FBI said there was no credible evidence linking him to 9/11. So ultimately, we invaded an entire nation based on a lie with no due process of law. No due process at
Osama
all.
bin Laden was
There have
claiming
been,
credit
you're a
from
liar,
it.
and you're a
Look,
traitor,
you know,
and you're a
I
chicken
gotta-
hawk, and you intend to send more American sons and daughters off to war so
I
that they
was
can come
against
home
the
and commit
Iraq War.
suicide to the tune of 22 a day. You are a traitor, and your days and your paymasters, believe you me, are ending. And the people of Afghanistan are correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Let's get
ISIS
a
is
Brett
down.
Bedowski now.
Children
Now it's Brett
destroyed the
Bedowski's
country.
turn.
We
Yes,
are
the
10
people of
seconds
Afghanistan and
away.
Iraq know
Kenna
full
Keefe,
well.
hold on. Kenna Keefe.
ISIS is a creation.
I'm going to take my mic
No,
off.
it's okay.
I'm going to take my mic off
Go ahead,
and
Brett
leave.
Bedowski.
I'm going to take my mic off and leave if this continues. I will not engage in this kind of discussion. Osama bin
Good.
Laden was
Then there
claiming
won't be any
credit
more
for
lies.
9/11.
Kenna Keefe, hold on. Brett
I was
Bedowski,
ag-
go
I
ahead.
was ag- shut your lying mouth, sport, and let me talk, or I'm walking off the stage here. Okay?
Go ahead, Brett Bedowski.
Do you
Anybody
think
that
I
says
care?
Osama
Please
bin
throw a
Laden
tantrum,
was,
you little man,
was
you traitor.
Brett Bedowski, go ahead.
Okay, that's it. Goodbye. It was good being on. I'm going to go get off. I'm not going to put up
Goodbye.
with this garbage, okay?
Look, I'm
we're going to
sorry.
conduct this professionally.
Go ahead.
We're going to conduct this
Good.
professionally,
You're the
or
one
we're not.
speaking
Go
garbage.
ahead. Kenna Keefe, let Brett
Absolute
Bedowski
garbage.
speak.
And the end result of your garbage.
Anybody-
Goodbye.
Go ahead,
Goodbye.
Kenna
The
Keefe.
end result of
Kenna
his
Keefe, hold
garbage.
on.
Osama
the end
bin
result
Laden-
of your garbage is more dead
Osama-
Americans for Israel.
Brett
So go ahead
Bedowski,
and
go
call
ahead.
me an
Am I
anti-Semite out
allowed
the
to-
door.
am I allowed to
That's
talk?
good for me. No problem.
Am I allowed to?
Yes, Brett
Am I allowed
Bedowski.
to talk?
Kenna Keefe, hold on.
I'm
Let's
sorry, I was
give
just
Brett
getting warmed
Bedowski
up. I thought
a
you were
chance
leaving.
to
Now
speak.
I'll shut up and listen to you.
Brent Bedowski, go ahead. Kenna Keefe, please hold on. You can respond to Brent Bedowski. Go ahead, Brent.
One, Osama bin Laden was claiming credit for 9/11, and anybody who says otherwise
Lie.
is a
He
liar.
said he didn't do it.
Two.
Doctored
Oh, okay.
videos. Lie.
Okay, fine. People can research that for their own. Point two, that I was against the Iraq War from the beginning. As I said, I was against the Iraq War before most Americans knew Bush wanted to fight it. I thought that was a horrible mistake. I said it from the beginning. I never supported the Iraq War. And the last thing I'm ever accused of being is a neocon. I was against that war. And I'll repeat it. If you want to have an intelligent discussion about what we do now, we have to do our best in Afghanistan to get a political and diplomatic solution that ends what will otherwise be an endless war. And while we do that, anybody interested in killing terrorists, including the United States in Afghanistan, should kill them, because I think that's the right thing to do. It's that simple. It's not an easy problem. But spare me the talk about Osama didn't do 9/11. Spare me the Israeli bashing and all that. I think it insults the intelligence of the press TV audience to reduce the discussion to that kind of stuff. We need to have a serious discussion about how to end a war that would otherwise be endless.
Okay,
that I've been trying for, obviously unsuccessfully, for about 15 years. But don't say we haven't tried, and don't say there's a better way. I don't think there is.
Fine. Quick timeout. Take a listen to some viewer comments. We'll come right back to the debate.
Taxpayers' money not only is wasted on a wrong war, but even the money kills innocent people in Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. Every hour, taxpayers in the United States are paying $4 million for costs of war in Afghanistan. It's been a long war which will lead to nowhere, but for their selfish interests, they were headlong to carry on with their evil mission. Overseas wars don't get even reported by U.S. news. Americans care about important stuff like the lives of Hollywood actors or singers. U.S. is not interested in curbing terrorism. They want their presence in this Central Asian country. U.S. taxpayer dollars are wasted in Afghanistan protecting poppy fields. Trump campaign rhetoric took a 180-degree turn when the U.S. deep state neocon war hawks sunk their fangs into him.
Some of the viewer comments. Well, Kenna Keefe, this is what I'd like to get your reaction on. And this is what Trump has said. His latest, we don't want to talk to the Taliban. We're going to finish what we have to finish, what nobody else has been able to finish. We're going to be able to do it.
You know, it's interesting theater, you know, it really is. But let's just get down to some basic facts. During World War II, and the history of World War II is just as ridiculous as virtually every history we're told by the powers that be. But if we're to believe official World War II history, that of all the crimes that Adolf Hitler committed, the most serious, the supreme crime, in their words, was war of aggression. Now, even if Osama bin Laden said that he did it, which he did not, and that's a doctored tape, and everybody who's looked at that knows that. He made very articulate statements as to why they did not carry this out. However, even if he acknowledged that he did it, there is something called due process, and there is a Security Council, and there is a United Nations, and there is an International Criminal Court, and there is a process if you happen to believe in law. And according to law, there would have needed to be some sort of due process which involves evidence being handed over. And it was the Taliban themselves that said to the United States, listen, if you give us the evidence, we'll hand Osama bin Laden over. But guess what? See, the Americans don't need to hand over evidence. They can just do whatever they want, along with their Israeli partners. And so let me get back to the anti-Semite charge, because we need to discuss the fact that there are indeed dual nationals inside the U.S. government who have no loyalty to the United States at all. And in fact, if we look at the policies of the United States, in particular the invasion of Iraq, where this gentleman keeps saying that he was against it, the real reason for the invasion of Iraq was twofold. One, to get rid of Saddam Hussein. Why? Because that was Israel's. You want to go ahead and interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. It is an absolute fact that Israel wanted Saddam Hussein gone. Target number one. That was the main objective of the invasion of Iraq. So don't tell me that was a failure. And the secondary purpose of invading Iraq was to split it up, to balkanize it, so that it would be fractured and weakened, so that the Greater Israel Project can be carried forward. As we see right now in Syria, the Israelis are now starting to annex land in the Golan Heights, and they want to push further beyond the border of the Golan Heights land, which they stole in 1967 and occupied ever since. They're trying now to get further into Syria, into a buffer zone, to annex more land. And this is the ultimate goal, and they will use false flag tactics like 9/11, in which Israelis with explosives were caught in their van on 9/11. Don't you dare tell me I'm lying about that. That's an absolute fact. It is true. And dozens of Israelis were arrested, many of which failed lie detector tests. Don't you dare interrupt me. True. Don't you? Really? The audience needs to check who was arrested on 9/11. Were there any Arabs arrested? No, in fact, we shuttled the Osama bin Laden family. The bin Laden family was shuttled out of the United States. And Israelis were also arrested, failed lie detector tests, were positively ID'd as Mossad agents, and they were quietly deported by Michael Chertoff, another dual national traitor.
I got to jump in, unfortunately, because we're just out of time. To give Badowski 30 seconds. Brent Badowski, what do you think is going to happen when it comes to Trump? Will his latest strategy, which sounds like he's going to up the ante with military action, going to work in Afghanistan? 30 seconds.
I don't think Trump knows yet what he's going to do because he's new. I do think General Mattis knows what he wants to do, which is to get a diplomatic solution while we strengthen the government of Afghanistan. There's only one way to do it, and that's for the Afghans and the Taliban to negotiate, for the United States to support that, and to end what would otherwise be a war that will never end, which no one in the United States wants.
Okay, we're going to end it there. Thank you, Brent Badowski, columnist at The Hill from Washington, D.C., and thank you, Ken O'Keefe, peace activist and former U.S. Marine from Montreal. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of The Debate. From me, Kaveh Taweh, entire team in the capital, Tehran. It's goodbye.